Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to this webinar jointly hosted by the Internet Society, Barbados chapter, and the CTU, the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. I am Rodney Taylor, the Secretary General of the CTU, and our webinar today is we're discussing women, youth, and cybersecurity, 3 urgent imperatives for digital transformation. How are these issues linked? You'll hear all about it. Thank you so much for joining us, for signing up. This is the first webinar actually for the Barbados chapter of the Internet Society, the first of many jointly hosted with the CTU. And the ISOC chapter has been hosting Internet IGFs in the past, Internet Governance Fora. And so this is really just a continuation of the engagement working along with the CTU. With us, we have a very exciting lineup of presenters on each individual topic. And without further ado, I will pass to Rodney Lewis to talk to you about what the CTU is doing in the area of women, youth, and cybersecurity. And he will also introduce the presenters who will be speaking on the individual topics. So thank you so much for joining us. Let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. We are also live streaming, and we will post the webinar up on our individual platforms, YouTube, Facebook, etc., both the ISOC Barbados chapter as well as the CTU. And of course, we hope that you will join us and sign up for membership in the Barbados chapter of ISOC if you haven't done so already. And certainly there are opportunities to participate in the Caribbean ICT Youth Network and our CTU network of women. So you have 3 options before you: the Internet Society Barbados chapter, the Caribbean ICT Youth Network, and the CTU network of women. So many opportunities to work with us. And the overall objective, as I'm sure Rodney will identify, is to help to increase the level of participation of the Caribbean in international policy development processes, whether it's in ICANN or the ITU. There's a huge youth summit taking place next year, January, in Cuba. Tariq will tell you about that as well. And so we just are very pleased to have this opportunity to share what we're doing with you and to engage with you. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rodney Lewis, who's a consultant with the CTU. Over to you, Rodney.
Thanks a lot, SG. My name is Rodney Lewis. I'm the Business Development Specialist at the CTU, Caribbean Telecommunications Union. And it's my pleasure today to welcome you to this webinar, Youth, Women, and Cybersecurity, 3 urgent imperatives for digital transformation. I'd like to begin by first thanking all of y'all for joining. Your involvement underscores the importance of stakeholder engagement in addressing these critical topics. My gratitude also goes out to the SG and CTU for facilitating this collaboration between ISOC and CTU as well. The CTU's mandate is to foster capacity building and digital transformation in the Caribbean. And this includes working closely with regional and international partners to ensure no one is left behind. Today's discussion highlights 3 pillars that are germane to this mission: empowering youth and women and addressing cybersecurity. I think if we go off script just a little bit, we've become so accustomed to using the internet that in a sense we've taken it for granted. But in moving forward with digital transformation, these are things that we have to be totally focused on. It is no longer a time for us to leave women and youth out of the discussions and continue with traditional norms. With this, I would like to hand over to Jason Hynds, who will speak more about ISOC, the Barbados chapter.
Thank you, Rodney. Secretary General, Caribbean Telecommunications Union, Mr. Rodney Taylor, presenters, specially invited guests, regional community, fellow Internet Society members, general audience, good evening, and thanks very much for being here at this event. I'm Jason Hynds, a founding member of the Internet Society Barbados chapter. Thus, on behalf of the co-host of this event, ISOC Barbados, I welcome you. I feel as though I'm at the door welcoming you into our space, and I hope that you'll enjoy the event. Moreover, I hope that this stimulates further thought, conversation, and importantly, follow-up actions. These actions should further the agenda related to these topics. What a big set of topics there are. And I'm looking forward to hearing, learning, engaging further with the subsequent speakers, as well as the previous ones. Now, at this point in the region, we have so many Internet Society chapters. We're in Haiti, we're in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, Guyana, Dominica, and of course, Barbados. So it would be an honor to collaborate more across the region and to assist both regionally and internationally within policy development. But for now, back to the moderator to guide us through to these exciting and hot topics.
Thanks again, Jason. Starting us off would be Francola John, Strategic Engagement Specialist and CTU Focal Point for ITU Network of Women. Francola, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Allow me to share my screen. It is indeed an exciting opportunity to present to the ISOC Barbados chapter this afternoon. As just recently, as of yesterday, the CTU, under the leadership of SG Taylor, launched the CTU Network of Women. It was an initiative that was approved by our General Conference of Ministers just last year, and we have been eagerly planning throughout the year to enable this launch. So, as introduced, I am Francola John, Stakeholder Engagement Specialist and the CTU focal point for the ITU's Network of Women. Now, the CTU, we have 20 member states, and this initiative with the CTU Network of Women, we'd like to ensure that all of our member states are involved in this network. The network in the launch yesterday had a few member states, and we are continuing to work to ensure that all of our member states are represented in the network. So at the 47th meeting of the Executive Council, a proposal was put forward to advancing gender equality, integrating parity, and mainstreaming into the national ICT agendas of our CTU member states. It included 8 recommendations, and it went forward to the General Conference of Ministers, who approved it with immediate implementation. The first item was a resolution which allowed us to appoint national focal points from member states and points of contact from non-member states. The other areas in which the General Conference of Ministers approved would be highlighted here. And of course, this presentation will be shared with you, but our focus will be to ensure that over the period of time that we incorporate mainstreaming, which include both men and women, into the national ICT agendas, as well as have a focus on monitoring and evaluating how the Caribbean in its, as part of the Latin America and Caribbean areas, that the Caribbean would have a greater focus. And when we talk about gender mainstreaming, and as I mentioned, it is for planned action for both men and women. There's an integrative approach to achieving this, and over the period of time in the coming years, the CTU would work on encouraging our member states to make decisions, policies, and programs for both men and women to ensure that they benefit equally. And when we talk about gender mainstreaming, while each member state would have their own gender policies, we're focusing on gender mainstreaming in ICT. The structure of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union Network of Women is led by our Secretary General, Mr. Rodney Taylor. We have senior advisors, Dr. Kim Malaleo, who is also a director or a member of the International Telecommunications Union Network of Women. We have Mrs. Mavis Johnson-Colley, who is from the Bahamas, but focuses on inclusion and persons with disabilities. Mrs. Reddock Downs, who's an advisor and a senior official of the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago. And we have Ms. Maria Mayor, who is from the OAS CITEL. As the focal point, I would also engage and ensure that we have a continuous action plan for our national focal points, our points of contact, as well as general membership. So we do have areas for everyone to be part of this network, whether you're part of government, civil society, academia, private sector. You are all welcome to be part of the network of women. Some of CTU partner organizations, and in the coming months, we're going to engage our members in terms of how the region can get involved with the Internet Corporation for Assigned Name and Numbers, that we know as ICANN, regional Internet societies, as Jason mentioned, that we have Internet societies throughout the region. We would want to engage with all of them. The American Registry for Internet Numbers, ARIN, Latin American and Caribbean Internet Addresses Registry, LACNIC, the United Nations Internet Governance Forum, UNIGF, and we're also partnering with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, and in my fellow presenters, they're going to talk about the critical aspect of cybersecurity. So we have some very key partners in who we work with to ensure that we continue to bring awareness of what is happening in the ICT landscape to our members. I mentioned ITU, which is the International Telecommunications Union, and we do have involvement in many of their sectors, which is the R sector, which deals with radio communications. We have the standardization sector and the development sector. And our work plans would include participation in all of the ITU sectors. The role of the point of contact that I mentioned earlier on is really to represent your organization or sector by participating in multi-stakeholder activities. And we know when it comes to many of our groups and partners, it takes a multi-sectorial approach and a multi-stakeholder approach. And we're definitely in the network of women want to do just that. We have to contribute to proposals and policies to the CTU within the network. And the organizations that I mentioned earlier on, there are opportunities for persons to be fellows in ICANN, in ARIN. They have calls for fellows, and there are a number of opportunities in which women involved in the network can be part of actual training and capacity building within these organizations. We are here to support the development of these programs and encourage female participation. And one of the things that we want to do over the next year is increase participation of women, especially in different aspects of ICT. We publish a publication quarterly called In the Know, and you will see the acronym there, NOW. And this comes from the fact that we have a number of female leaders in the telecommunications landscape and ICT landscape in the region, and a gap remains in these platforms dedicated to sharing experiences. So quarterly, we feature a leading Caribbean woman in ICT, but also we encourage persons to submit articles showcasing what is happening in the region. And that is us being in the know. Let us know what is happening. We encourage and we invite. And as I said, we are reaching out to all of our member states, Barbados included, to increase the number of participation at international fora, but also to be part of our network. So we're leveraging various networks of women critical to addressing this gap, and therefore we have this publication that we would really like persons to subscribe to, reach out to us. We have that information in terms of how you can communicate with us. And that means our effective communication channels means that we can get the information to you and you can get the information to us. We have a Google Drive where we're going to be sharing with our members. Our CTU website, we are going to have this as one of the first points of contact for the network, where we drive your attention to our website and you can find everything concerning the network of women. We would also have a WhatsApp group, an email dedicated to the network, our very active social media pages, and that would be shared in the chat shortly in terms of how you can join our social media platforms to get information about everything concerning the network. And you will not believe how much information or content there is to share. We really want you to be in the know. Constant contact at various times when we have events and meetings, such as this webinar, you will be contacted via this medium. We have our member circular, as I mentioned, our quarterly newsletter, and we'll be preparing annual reports. So if you have your, as mentioned earlier on, if we have the regional ISOC communities, any reports that really focus on gender initiatives, we would like to be able to share that with our network. Again, our calendar of events would be also on our website, and you can, the link is in the presentation here, where you can view upcoming events. So again, you're always in the know when it comes to the CTU, so that you're not missing on very important activities happening in the landscape. Very notable events happening in 2025. Our 2025 calendar is already up on our website. We have first coming up the Trinidad and Tobago Internet Governance Forum. We have ICANN 82, RN 55, LACNIC 43. We have the 20th UN IGF and a UN ODC workshop on ransomware. So, and that's just in the first quarter. So our very active international and global ICT landscape, we really want to get our network involved. So we ask you, please join the CTU network of women. And as you would see on the structure, we have that for young men as well. So if you're between the ages of 18 and above, you are welcome, because we also have a youth network, which Tariq will speak about. And therefore, we also focus on young women within that same age group. A draft work plan for 2025 will be submitted at our next planning meeting, which is scheduled for 28th of January. And most of what we will be doing in 2025, we are going to focus heavily on empowerment and capacity building. And capacity building is part of our value proposition at the CTU, where we ensure that member states are aware of training programs happening with our partners, such as USTTI. We have Diplo Foundation, even the other organizations that I mentioned earlier on, ICANN, ARIN, they all have training programs throughout the year. ITU, LACNIC, and capacity building in the region is a critical focal point for the CTU. Advocacy and policy influence, as we mentioned, anything that takes place in the ICT landscape would need legislation, would need policy development, and that is what we are working with the member states from the government perspective to do. Knowledge sharing and research, we do have a research unit, and one of the things we'd like to do is capture data and ensure that as we launch the program, we monitor and evaluate the progress and the improvement and the statistics that we would then share. Partnerships and collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, and we have a P2C acceleration program coming up shortly, where the network will be very, very interested in identifying projects in the region and also identifying ways of finding funding. So again, if you have any information of any project in your member state that you'd like for us to undertake, we are willing to look for partnerships and collaborations to make sure that those projects come off the ground. We spoke of monitoring and evaluation, and that is critical to us. So as a facilitator for not just the ITU Network of Women, but other partners, we are building a community in the Caribbean region where we would have very active participation and activities catered to the Network of Women. Again, gathering data and conducting research is critical. Gender mainstreaming practice, align the practice with national strategic documents, allocate resources, identify focal points, and also collaborate with partner and government institutions. We invite Barbados to reach out to us through the CTU communication channels and get involved. So we do want to measure the impact and make sure that the region has greater influence in policies and decisions being made on a global scale. Thank you very much. And that is my presentation. I'll open the floor for questions and answers at this time.
What we would do is ask individuals then to keep all their questions to the end. I would like to thank Francola for that very substantive presentation as always. And as she mentioned, empowerment and capacity building, advocacy, policy influence, knowledge sharing and research, and partnership and collaboration, monitoring and evaluation, all these things are extremely necessary if you're talking about digital transformation and talking about the impact that the Internet Society should have along with collaborative efforts from CTU. I would like to now introduce a very dynamic young man, Tariq Mohammed, CTU ICT Youth from the CTU ICT Youth Network. Tariq, over to you.
Thank you, Rodney, and good afternoon, everyone. So it's firstly a pleasure to be here today. And as I load up my screen, my name is Tariq Mohammed. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. A little bit about me. I'm a consultant with the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union that Francola mentioned, but here to talk today in the capacity of the chair and coordinator of the Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum Initiative, which was really sprouted under the CTU, as well as this Caribbean ICT Youth Network, or CIYN. So we're here today to chat a little bit about promoting regional development through youth inclusion. So in June 2022, myself and a number of other Caribbean young persons made our way all the way to Kigali, Rwanda in Africa for a youth summit in ICTs, which was hosted by ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, which is the UN agency for all things ICT. On our final day, just hours before we had to fly back to the Caribbean, which was quite a long journey, we were approached by SG Taylor as well as his deputy, Mr. Nigel Casimir, where they wanted to really hear our views and opinions of the forum and tasked us to really plan and develop the first ever Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, which would take place a few months later in August 2022. So this forum really set out to bridge gaps in youth representation and participation in regional internet governance initiatives as well as fora. We centered it around three main objectives: to firstly engage youth in these fora and in these discussions surrounding internet governance. Secondly, to develop the technical as well as non-technical capacity of youth in the sphere of internet governance, and ultimately strengthen regional development and collaboration through inclusivity. And so for the past 3 years, including this one, we've had our annual Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, the first one taking place online, the second one taking place in a hybrid format in Trinidad and Tobago, as well as virtually, and the third, once again, hybrid, taking place in person in Guyana, as well as online. And we've seen a very dynamic mix of young persons, as well as persons outside of, the young people that are interested and come and attend these and actively engage with the youth on internet governance matters within as well as outside of these fora themselves. To put this into perspective, internet governance is just one of the many areas within the ICT sector. And so we're working now on developing this Caribbean ICT Youth Network, which would cover not just the matters of internet governance, but also other ICT-related matters such as ICT development, spectrum management, and other technical fora. And the real focuses of this network surround, among other things, capacity building, mentorship, networking, potentially on-the-job training later down the line, and many more initiatives to really bring youth and leverage youth who are digital natives in our national and regional developments in the ICT sector. So just to show some of the activities that we've done over the years, we've done quite a few, and these are, just some of the major engagements and interactions that we've been a part of. In 2022, we had that launch meeting in Rwanda with CTU, which led to the first ever Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, that's me there, as well as a fellowship for some youth to the International Telecommunication Union's Plenipotentiary Conference all the way in Romania. In 2023, we hosted again the second Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, as well as our first launch meeting of this CIYN network, which was held in Barbados as part of the CTU's ICT Week. In addition to that, we also attended or had fellowships through the CTU for a youth representative to attend the World Radio Communications Conference all the way in Dubai. And looking at 2024 now, we had the third ever Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum, as well as a second meeting of the Caribbean ICT Youth Network in St. Kitts and Nevis as part of CTU's annual ICT Week. And so these are just a snapshot of some of the activities that we've been involved in. But as you can see, we are heavily focused at this time on internet governance and that side of things, but not only on that. And as I recall, the whole scoping of what we're looking at, it really is very wide and vast in terms of its coverage as we're looking at covering ICTs. So what's next, and what's next on our agenda? What's next on our focus? As you may know, the UN IGF is having its annual Internet Governance Forum happening next month in Saudi Arabia. And we are very pleased to report that one of our youth leadership members on the CIYN has been selected as a fellow to go and attend in person. Of course, the rest of us will be following virtually. So if there is anyone from the Barbados chapter that will be attending, we'd love to make that connection, at least between you, if you're on the ground, with our delegate that will be there. In addition to which, basically the ITU, based on the first event that they had in 2022, would now like to hold its second ever Youth Summit, which will be taking place in Cuba in March 2025. And so we'd be interested in really putting together, a delegation to attend and represent the Caribbean, which is an area that the ISOC chapter could also contribute to and work with us on. And of course, as we look at internet governance, in August of 2025, also in Cuba, ironically, we will be having the 21st Caribbean Internet Governance Forum, as well as the 4th Caribbean Youth Internet Governance Forum. Now, I spoke a lot about the network and youth, but what are the demographics that we're looking at? At this time, we're looking at persons between the ages of 18 to 35 that we classify as youth. No, you don't need to have a technical background. You don't need to have an engineering or computer science or programming, background or experience or degree to be part of it. And it's really, freely accessible to all and on a very voluntary basis. And if you are at all interested, I'd like to invite you to scan this QR code here to sign up the expression of interest form to really join the network. And so on this form, you can apply as a member or any other interested party. So persons outside of this age group could still register under this expression of interest to receive more information on upcoming youth-related activities that they may or may not be able to support or share with their own networks. So really, that's it on the Caribbean youth side of things. I just wanted to keep it short, as I know we're a bit late in the evening. So just thanks once again for the opportunity for having me here. If you do have any questions, you could feel free to reach out to me at any time through this email that we see on the screen, which is cyigf@ctu.int. And thank you. And the QR code is once again here in case if you missed it on the previous slide. So thank you. And I'd like to hand back over to the chair. Rodney, over to you.
Well, thanks again, Tariq. Never disappoints, as I said, very dynamic young man. And when you look at the topics that Tariq discussed, from internet governance, spectrum management, ICD-4D, technical forums, and the focuses then that are related to these in terms of capacity building and mentorship, right? You shouldn't be misled at all by that term, Caribbean ICT Youth Network. You should realize that the youth do play an extremely integral part in trying to advance technology throughout the region. Right now, I would like to introduce Shernon Osepa. Hope we didn't massacre your name. He's the cybersecurity specialist for the CTU. Over to you, Shernon.
Thank you very much, Rodney. Let me share my screen. Okay, so hello to all. It's a pleasure, honor for me to be here. My name is Shernon Osepa, and I'm a consultant, strategic advisor with CTU, focusing on, among others, cybersecurity. So basically, what I would like to do is to focus a bit more on what the Caribbean Telecommunication Union is doing in this regard. Can you guys see my slide? No? You can see it, right? Okay. Yes. So I would like to focus a bit more on what CTU is doing with respect to cybersecurity. We know this is a very important topic, especially we are trying to deploy more infrastructures in the Caribbean. But while we're trying to deploy more infrastructure, this also brings some challenges with it because we do have cyber criminals, and this is an opportunity for them as well because their business is becoming bigger as well. So much more people connected. This is also an opportunity for them to do the things that they are doing. So let's take a snapshot in the Caribbean, what is happening. And again, I'm not here to point fingers, but I'm just mentioning what is happening. Real life is happening in the Caribbean. And these are some newspapers headlines. So these are not things that I did invent, but these are headlines that we have seen in the newspapers. Given that we are in Barbados, let me start with let's say one challenge that we have seen in Barbados, and that's with respect to the hackers claim access to the Barbados Revenue Authority admin portal. So this was a huge discussion in Barbados. And again, I'm not here to point fingers, but we need to realize what is happening in the world and try to find solutions for them. So that is why cybersecurity is very important, because cybercrime is taking place all over the globe. If we take a look, we will leave Barbados for a while. Let's focus a bit now on Jamaica. We have seen that, for example, in 2023, 43 million cyber attacks were conducted in Jamaica. This doesn't mean that all of them or most of them were not successful, but it gives us an indication what is happening, what cyber criminals are doing, and how they're attacking, let's say, the Caribbean. We have also seen, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, the telecoms company was hacked by cyber criminals. And this has had some very big implication in the country, in Trinidad and Tobago. And if you take a look, for example, at our brothers and sisters in Central America, Costa Rica, we have seen the same thing happening. And not to forget, for example, Latin America and other parts of the world. So cybersecurity is a big, or cybercrime is a big challenge that we are seeing all across the globe. So it's important when we talk about cybersecurity for us to take a look on some definitions. You may find different definitions, but I think when we talk about cybersecurity, basically, cybersecurity refers to preventive methods to protect information from being stolen, compromised, or attacked in some other way. So we see three words: stolen, compromised, or attacked. Whatever that we're seeing taking place, one of them may have a given connotation with one of these concepts. Either information is being stolen, compromised, or attacked. It's also important for us to realize, not because something is happening on the internet, that we need to blame the internet, especially when talking with policymakers. If a cybercrime occurs, then some of them would like to blame the internet. And again, the internet is neutral. We need to focus on the cyber criminals that are committing these acts and not focusing on, for example, the internet itself. It's also very important when we talk about cybersecurity that we map, let's say, the cybersecurity activities ongoing. And this can be done in three main groups. We can look, for example, at the type of action that is taking place. For example, data interception, denial of service, identity theft. We can also look at the type of perpetrator, criminals, terrorists, secret services, etc., etc. And we can also look, for example, at a type of target. So private companies may be targeted, individuals, utility, military assets, etc., etc. So when we talk about cybersecurity, it's important for us to look at the specific area, looking at the action, perpetrator, or the target being conducted. We know if we look at the threats taking place, they can also be grouped in a few groups. We see, let's say, the malicious software that we abbreviate with malware. Whenever you may have a given software on a system and your IT department didn't install that software, then we can always start thinking, okay, we're dealing here with a malicious software. We have seen also, for example, the botnets, robotic networks taking place, not to talk about, let's say, the denial of service, and if they are distributed, then we talk about the DDoS, phishing, and spear phishing, focusing specifically on specific targets, and e-scams. I just saw today a given bank in one of our Caribbean islands where a lot of scams were happening. So these are the threats that we are seeing, not only in the Caribbean, but in the whole world. Cybersecurity, it's a very broad theme, so we can spend a whole day just focusing on one specific topic. So that is why it's important for us to break it down in smaller pieces in order for us to address each one of them in a very specific and effective way. Generally speaking, we can break this down in like 8 big areas. We can look at the link where all the data or the packets are being sent. We can look at the telecoms infrastructure. We can look at the internet itself. And when we talk about the internet, most people, if you ask someone what is the internet, most people, or a lot of people, not most, a lot of people would say things like Instagram, maybe Google, Facebook, etc., etc. But when we talk about the internet, we are looking at 2 main components. We are looking at the domain name system, and we're looking at the names and also the routes that the internet are using. So, and there are measures that we can take to secure that the DNS, the domain name system, is secure. We can also spend, let's say, a lot of time try to secure the devices. And here we talk about computers, smartphones, and tablets. Again, what I'm trying to do today is to highlight these 8 big areas for us to make the deep dive, not today, but when we are dealing with cybersecurity challenges. We need also to focus on the applications that we are using. These applications are loaded on our devices. And of course, we have the data that we are protecting. One very important topic that we need also to secure is the identity. Nowadays, you see people posting all kinds of things on the internet. And we need to remember that whatever you put on the internet, it will remain on the internet in one way or the other. Maybe you're trying to delete a given server, but that information will be somewhere else. And this is the way how people from the forensic, they identify criminal activities ongoing on the internet. And not to forget, let's say, critical or essential services. So each country should define what are the essential or critical services for them, and then based on them, coming with the appropriate measure to defend those or to secure those services. If you look in the Caribbean, we do have a few challenges. And one of the biggest challenges that we have in the Caribbean is capacity building. Especially small island development states, we don't have many persons, let's say, with the skills that can help us to address all the challenges that we are facing. So capacity building is a big challenge that we have in the Caribbean. We need also to have policies in place because not all of the time we have, let's say, harmonized policy. You may have in a given country, people try to do this, and in another country, people do something else. So we need to find ways how we can harmonize all these policies in order to be much more effective. Also, national cybersecurity strategies. If you look in the Caribbean, just a few countries, let's say, have national cybersecurity strategies. So this is also one area that we need to focus a bit more on. Research is also not one of the strongest part of us. We may find things, but we need also to focus on, let's say, on data to do much more research in order for us to address specific challenges that we're seeing. Also, the CERT and CSERT, we have a few in the Caribbean, but it's very important that they are also embedded in national cybersecurity strategies or law in order for them to help us to identify challenges that we have seen and also to coordinate with other CERT or CSERT in other parts of the world. So this is also a very important area that we need to focus a bit more on. And not to forget collaboration and partnerships. If you look at the internet itself, it all started with collaboration and partnership. And this is exactly what we would like to do as well. We need to collaborate with others because we cannot solve all the problems by ourselves. So that is why we need to partner and collaborate with others. Another big challenge that we have faced in the Caribbean is funding. We would like to do a lot of things, but most of the times we don't have, let's say, the funds to execute all the big and nice plans that we have. So that is why we are collaborating with others who can also assist us in that regard. So what is CTU doing about all these challenges that I did mention? One of the first area that CTU is focusing on is raising awareness. What we're doing tonight can be seen also in that light. We work with member states to raise awareness regarding the main challenges that we are seeing. And not only raising awareness, we would like also to come with advice for the member states to take into consideration to enhance, let's say, the cybersecurity in our countries. We focus also a lot on events, and not for the sake of events, but again, it's for us to raise awareness and to work with the local communities in order for us to address the challenges that we are facing. And we do also organize what we call the ICT weeks, in which this is a very holistic approach, looking at all sectors within a given country. And based on that, we are trying to have much more people engaged in CTU's ongoing work, but not only CTU's, also all the other members of the internet ecosystem. And also internet governance fora, that's also one of the strong parts of the CTU, of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union. As most of you may know, the first IGF was organized by CTU, so we are very proud with this path that we have started, and we would like to continue to working on that. So as I did mention before, capacity building, this is also what we're doing, and not only focusing on the policy side of capacity building, because one of the challenges that we have seen is hands-on, let's say, labs and those kind of things. We can talk a lot and draft all nice policies, but if we don't have people who can actually do the job and who are knowledgeable how to solve the real world challenges and problems that we're seeing with respect to cybercrime, then still we have a big problem. So that is why we have been focusing on policy. Policy must be in place, policy and enforcement. But we are also working with others. For example, next year, May, we're going to have a ransomware workshop whereby we're going to do a deep dive on hands-on with respect to ransomware, and especially working with policy advisor, not only policy advisor, but law enforcement people and CSIRTs and CERT in order for them to address these challenges. We are fostering collaboration. I'm not going to mention the names now in order for me not to forget anyone, but we have been collaborating with key organizations all around the globe to assist us in this regard. And based on that, we do expect that next year we can even see much bigger, let's say, impact, given that we are working with people and organizations from all over the globe. As I did mention before, research, data, that's also one of the big challenges that we are seeing. And basically what we would like to do, and we have started it already, is to focus on an observatory. In collaboration with ICANN, we are working on an observatory, but we would like to, in addition to what we're doing right now, the first phase, we would like to have a real-time observatory functioning in order for us to identify all the challenges that I have been mentioning, all the cyber threats that we are seeing. And then based on that, we have concrete data that we can find ways how to solve, or at least to address all these challenges in collaboration with our partners, member states, governments, and so on and so on. So basically, that's basically what CTU is doing with respect to cybersecurity. We would like to invite all of you to collaborate with us, because as I did mention, this is not a problem. This is not something that we can solve by ourselves. We need to collaborate with others. If you look at the cyber criminals, we can learn a lot from them. They are well organized, they collaborate with each other, and they have the funds as well. So we need to at least use the same strategies that they are using in order for us to try to solve these big challenges that we are seeing. So with that, I would like to thank you. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you again, Shernon. That was a very informative presentation. And CTU remains committed to fostering capacity building and collaboration. We recognize that cybersecurity can be very cost prohibitive, which we should try to engage the public partnerships in order to ensure that they share resources and stuff properly, right? So that we be able to work together in order to achieve the goals we need to in terms of cybersecurity. One thing I would like to say on this, back in my days as an IT professional, one thing we used to employ is something called ethical hacking. And it's something that I would like to implore organizations in these times to get into, because you need to understand the mind of the hacker. So the professionals within IT would actually go through a course where we actually learn how to become hackers, so that we'll be able to prevent those threats from the institution. Thanks again, Shernon. I would like now to hand over to Jason, if he has any words to say where the Internet Society is concerned.
Thank you, Rodney. Thank you. Great presentations. So we have run over time, and we thank you so much for staying with us. I just want to touch a few things as we close. Firstly, the internet is for everyone. Anyone can join an Internet Society chapter within their catchment area. And the best way to be a member is to think and confer globally, but also to primarily implement initiatives locally. And to join an Internet Society chapter, you just go to the website, internetsociety.org, and you can find your most local chapter. Secondly, this great collaboration championed and facilitated by the CTU and resources of the Internet Society gives us opportunity to implement initiatives both locally and regionally. So I would implore us to grasp those opportunities, please. In this part, I want to thank the CTU very much for hosting this event along with the Internet Society Barbados chapter. Secretary General, Mr. Rodney Taylor, is an amazingly responsive and supportive person to the ISOC chapters and to other internet governance IG-related groups, so we can't thank him enough. CTU's Business Development Officer, Mr. Rodney Lewis, a great moderator, and I look forward to many more sessions seeing him, especially as he's a member of the ISOC Barbados chapter. Now, I've been a fan of Francola John ever since I met her years ago, and her presentation was informative. Actually, she had me tempted to disguise myself and join this network of women. However, I'm sure without hiding my identity, I can still be supportive and link into the network as necessary. I've only met Tariq Mohammed today. I'm impressed and grateful for his presentation and to hear of his legacy work thus far. He excites me about the future, and despite my advanced years, I still wish to have future interaction with him and with his network. And what can I say about the erudite Mr. Shernon Osepa? His cybersecurity presentation showcases some educational, relevant, and timely information. Luckily for us in this region, he's a great collaborator. So please engage him and let's improve our cybersecurity posture. So thanks very much to the presenters and the audience. Your time and engagement appreciated. And thanks for staying the extra minutes we overran. I'm not sure if
One correction, Jason. We still have a couple minutes, like
sorry.
7 minutes. So if you don't mind, if there are any closing remarks at all from the participants, any questions or anything, all right?
Okay, yes. All right, so back to you for that.
So you can, So as I said, any closing remarks from any of the participants or anything that they would have heard on the presentations, feel free now in these next 5 minutes to comment.
Sorry, if I may use my privilege here as one of the panelists. I want to also thank the presenters for the excellent interaction. I've been going through the list of participants who are logged in. Of course, we are streaming, so we're not sure who's actually following online. We'll have those stats later. And I want to also express my appreciation to Jodie McPhee with the Internet Society for always, over many years, supporting the chapters all over the world, and in particular at events like this, and getting the live streams out and getting the recordings up. But going through the list, there are quite a few participants from all over the world. I don't necessarily want to call out people or ask them to even speak, but to acknowledge the presence of people like James Bino, Chris Seacharan, David Giddens, who worked for some time with the government of Barbados on cybersecurity, and he's still in the trenches working on cybersecurity. A very big challenge for us here in the region. Lance Hynds, Maureen Hillard, hi. It must be a crazy hour for you because you're on the other side of the world. Mike Ford, Michelle Marius, Rodney Payne, I worked with him before, Sidney DeWeaver, regulator from St. Martin. So we have a very wide range of participants here. And I know they could probably interrogate us on cybersecurity, what we're doing as a region, as governments, public sector, right, and what we're not doing right. So I really appreciate Shernon's presentation, which was quite comprehensive. And I know the issue of cybersecurity remains a challenge for us, and hence why the 3 topics were framed like this: women, and why we need to expand our range of focus so that we sort of break the glass ceiling in areas such as cybersecurity as well, so we get more women involved and we get those perspectives in terms of technical expertise and also international representation, and of course youth, so that we build the next generation of experts, the next generation of policymakers that can help take the region forward. And lastly, the issue of cybersecurity, which, as Shernon pointed out, with the major hacks that we've been seeing, present a major challenge for governments, because it is almost a distraction. Financially, they have to put money towards mitigating these cyber threats and responding and trying to recover data, trying to get services back online. That is money that could be spent in actually building up digital infrastructure. So it is a very, very huge problem that we need to work together to address. So I just wanted to share that with you and maybe tease out a few questions in the last few minutes or comments from our participants. We like to ensure that the sessions are interactive. So I just wanted to share that and express my appreciation as well to the presenters. And I'll hand it back over to you for any closing comments or to answer any questions that may come up.
Thanks again, SG. As Secretary General said, if there are any comments or closing remarks from anybody, any one of the online participants, you can feel free now. We relate your participation. Thanks again to all the presenters. If any of the presenters would also like to solidify any of the points that they made before in the last 2 minutes, feel free as well. Yeah.
Yes, maybe I can just add. I didn't mention it, but right now we are updating a cybersecurity strategy that we have been working on. Or let me put it like this: in 2016, we had a cybersecurity strategy in the Caribbean, which was developed by several stakeholders, among others, CTU. So right now we are working on updating that cybersecurity strategy, and we do expect by let's say the beginning of 2025 to have it fully updated. So just stay in tune, and once we have that, we will share that with the community as well. Thank you.
Thank you again, Shernon. I think now the time is actually up. I thank all the participants and all the persons who would have joined us for this webinar. Thought it was extremely informative and look forward to more of these sessions. We'll have a good night.